Well, that was annoying. Yeah, massive amount of coffee went everywhere there. Anyway, yeah, sorry about that, guys. Let's get back on it. Get back to the debates. So, yeah, I think one of the biggest sort of disagreements with extinctionists and non-extinctionists is that they think that essentially life is it's the most important thing, right? That life existing is the most important thing. And this kind of does reflect directly on their survival instinct. So for people and animals, right, they have evolved to see their life as the most important thing. And, you know, if they were asked to give up their life for a good cause, for example, or for something necessary, they would struggle to do it. In fact, many of them, if not most of them, would find an excuse not to do it. Which is kind of what they're currently doing, right? Resisting against extinction. So, yeah, most people, again, would not be willing to give up their life for a good cause, even if it was like an extremely worthy cause. So, and, you know, they not only will they not give up their life itself, but they won't give up their time as well. So, in the same sense that their life, you know, and death is their survival, their own time and their sort of reputation and, you know, social balance in their own life, etc., even their leisure and entertainment is also part of their survival. So they're also not willing to give that up if it, you know, makes their life slightly worse. That goes against their survival, and they're not willing to give that up either to help others. So this is why people are so, well, unhelpful, uncaring. It's because they've evolved only to care about themselves, and which, of course, guarantees like the worst world possible. So, yeah, part of this is a complete lack of empathy for others. And, you know, ironically, they'll be able to have a lot of empathy for themselves, more so than others. But equally, people's empathy, even for themselves, is still limited, right? They don't think about their own suffering and the risk of suffering to themselves. So essentially, you know, extinctionism is really about more awareness. That's a large part of it. So I would say that a lot of the empathy really just comes from awareness. So what this means is that for most people, their lack of morality and ethics is actually largely because they are unaware of just how extreme suffering is. They can't empathize with it because they can't understand it, and they are limited from understanding it. So for many extinctionists, it's simply awareness of suffering in the world which leads them to have the empathy. So the more you learn about how bad suffering is, the more empathy you will gain just from awareness, essentially. So, you know, if you're like a normal kind of person, unless you're like a complete sadist or a psychopath, then the more you learn about suffering and the more you learn about how bad it is and how urgent it is to help them, then the more empathy you will naturally gain, basically. Or at least that's how it's been for most of our activists, right? So it's not that they're obsessed with empathy. It's not that they're like in an empath cult or anything. It's simply that they have higher amounts of awareness. So most people are very capable of ignoring all of the suffering in the world, you know, pretending it doesn't exist, finding reasons to say, oh, you know, animals don't suffer that much, or suffering, it only lasts a short while. So they'll just find reasons to sort of not understand suffering correctly. And so they end up understanding it in a very incorrect way, where part of it is that they don't actually have the capacity to process and to imagine and understand the suffering of others, especially when it's extreme. So the ability to understand severe suffering and extreme suffering is essentially limited for most people, to the point where they're not even able to understand it correctly. Because if they were able to understand it correctly, then they would have much more empathy. They would actually care about the suffering more. But the less you can actually imagine and feel and understand the suffering of others, and even potential hypothetical suffering, then the less you're going to care about suffering, the less you're going to think about it, the less you're going to account for it and prepare for it and consider it. So that's how evolution has gotten people to just completely ignore it. Aya is asking, what happened to the views? Did you get any restrictions? No, it was worse than that. I spilt an entire mug of coffee all over my room and had to end the stream. Hopefully it'll come back up. So we'll just keep cracking on. We've got somebody in the queue. Hello, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
So, what are you doing on a day-to-day basis to stop suffering or to minimize suffering?
Yeah, so we're growing the movement on a day-to-day basis, right? Doing daily activism so that we can make ending all suffering possible.
But what are you actively doing besides?
Activism, making videos, live streaming, talking to people, doing everything we can, really.
But that's not really ending or stopping suffering. That's just growing your movement.
So how would you end all suffering?
If I would be, let's say, a multi-billionaire, I would
Okay, but you're not. So what would you do?
helping homeless people.
And
helping the
how does
elderly.
that work towards ending all suffering?
Because I minimize people's suffering. You actually do nothing and just grow your own movement.
Don't you
which
think
is
it's
quite
kind of the
selfish.
opposite, right? So the thing is that we should help everyone. You're saying that we shouldn't help everyone. We should only help like one or two people and just leave everyone else to suffer.
But you're not even helping one person.
Right, but we're helping everyone. That's better than helping one person.
No, you are. Like, with all the respect, I think you're quite selfish because you are in some sort of.
Well, look, we're having logical disagreement here, and you're just being insulting for no reason.
It's not insulting. It's the truth.
So how is it selfish to help everyone?
You're not helping anybody.
How do you know?
How does your movement help me right now?
So if it doesn't help you right now, then it doesn't help anyone.
How does it help anybody? How does it help one person?
So it will help all of those who don't have to suffer once we've done extinction.
It doesn't help anybody.
Why not?
It's just growing a movement. I can grow a movement for to plant more trees like across the world, but that would actually be more helpful than what you're doing.
So why is extinction unhelpful, do you think?
Because it's just forcefully unaliving people who are.
That doesn't explain how it doesn't help anyone, right?
It doesn't. I would not be helped by you.
Okay, so basically, she's demonstrating perfectly what I've been saying, that humans are extremely selfish, right? Extraordinarily selfish. And so, literally, she's unable to think about the rest of the world. She's only able to think about herself. And so when we say, what about all the people it will help? She says, well, it won't help me, will it? So she doesn't care about anyone else. She only cares about herself. A movement that's trying to end all suffering. Well, it's all about her, isn't it? Give me money, give me something. Otherwise, I don't care about if your movement helps anyone else. So that is unfortunately the classic human mentality at the minute. It's one of, I don't care about anyone else. What about me? And who cares if anyone suffers? Help me, do what I want you to do. Who cares about anyone else? And she had the gall to call me selfish, which is amazing, right? Okay, moving on. Let's see. Right, we do not have many people in the queue.
Oh, James, you've been taking your time. I bet you right now Alex is in the queue. You can let him in next after this if you want.
So he is in the queue, yeah.
So I was gonna ask you a follow-up question from last live, but I now you informed the live on why you had to end. I thought personally your mum was shouting you for your tea or your dinner or something, but no, you spilled your coffee. Why couldn't you tell me you were drinking coffee last live anyway? You don't know?
Yeah. Do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I've just been pondering on this whole movement. Oh, what team did you go in real quick, Cav?
Say again?
Team, which one?
Which one?
Yeah, doesn't matter. Right. I just wanted to say your whole movement, yeah. It just seems like a bunch of people who you acknowledge all the suffering in the world and you want it all to end, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just seems like you're scared to kill yourself and you're making a movement where you have to make loads of other people. You ever heard of Heaven's Gate? Sounds like that, just to a higher volume. Well, that's what you're attempting to do anyway. But you're just a little bitch, James. I'd slap my balls off your forehead, James.
So you assume that I have to be acting selfishly and thinking about my own suffering.
I don't assume at all. But just because the majority doesn't have good things going on in life, which everyone suffers at some point in their life, some more than others, which I can admit, yes. But it's whether they choose to persevere, and that is something you're incapable of, James, because you're a little bitch.
So you think it comes down to choosing to persevere?
This is what people. This is your choice. This is a person's choice, and
So you think that every life form has?
Your whole lingo is, oh, we'll just end the world because it's not good.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question then. So do you think that suffering is okay because?
No, suffering's not okay, but it's bound to happen whether people say it's right or wrong or not, and that's something you know yourself, James.
But why does it being bound to happen make it acceptable?
If you're being realistic as well.
But
I
why
am on
does Cloud?
this gear, bro. Fucking 220 mast.
Okay, well, look, he's obviously not able to debate, right? He's just yapping. Okay, moving on. Let's see if we have anybody else that wants to debate. You know, we've got this guy called Joe chatting a lot of nonsense in the chat, but say it to my face, right? Come and debate, come and say it. Let's see if you can actually defend your opinions and if you can actually defend the position that extinction would be wrong. Hello, how you doing?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so previously you've said that you wanted to make creatures extinct one by one, and I wanted to know why you don't believe in killing everything collectively. So, like, personally, I believe if we were to do this, then we should slow down Earth such that it falls onto the sun, and everything dies and it's impossible for life to evolve again. Why do you think we should deliberately make each species extinct by itself?
So that they don't have to suffer.
Yeah, but why not just kill everything at once, is my point.
Well, I mean, the thing is that universe-wide extinction takes priority over Earth extinction. So we have to research the best extinction we can do. It's not as simple as just kill everything all at once. You know, if that's an option, then it will be considered. But you suggesting random options doesn't actually help anything, right?
Oh, so you think there are life outside Earth?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that explains it. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Zaid. So yeah, our priority is universe-wide extinction, or at least doing the most vast and thorough extinction we can do. So we might only be able to do the galaxy, or who knows, we might be able to do the whole universe. But we should leave it to the science to decide. Okay. And unfortunately, people think that, you know, suggesting random methods for extinction is actually helpful, but it's not helpful at all. We should just leave it to the science to decide. Hello, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you, sir?
Good, thank you. Do you have any questions?
Yes, sir. I was wondering how we go about total extinction of life in the universe when we're stuck here on this shithole.
Well, we're growing a movement of activists who are going to work towards researching and carrying out the best extinction that we can do, basically.
Right, but we're stuck here on this shithole. How are we going to exterminate everything in the universe when we're stuck here?
Well, we should simply research if it's possible to do anything for the universe, and you have to consider as well that we have, all of eternity to improve and advance our technology and science, and we may be able to pass the job on to AI and robots, right? So, one possibility is that we would have total extinction on Earth, and AI and robots would go out and continue the mission, and they might fail. They might not be able to do anything beyond Earth, but we can let them try, or we can try.
Right, yeah. I agree with what you're saying, that there's a lot of extreme suffering that's needless, and that shouldn't take place. Yeah, to figure out how about going to end that suffering is a really
Extinction. Extinction
it's
is
a
the only.
very mindful thing.
Extinction is the only way to end suffering, basically. So it's the only thing we can do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just kind of wondering, how to go about.
Yeah,
The universe.
Step one is to just grow the movement, and step two is to take over the world and to start running it ethically, which needs to happen anyway. And then we start with animal extinction and researching the most vast and thorough extinction that we can do. So that research may conclude that Earth is all we can do, or it may conclude that we might be able to do beyond Earth. So we should explore. We should explore what is possible, because we have lots of animals and other life depending on us. So we shouldn't just completely discard the idea of doing universe-wide extinction or beyond Earth. We should at least look into if anything's possible. And the thing is that it can take 100,000 years to get to the next star, for example, or across the galaxy. But we have billions and trillions of years, right, for life to develop on those planets. So if we have to send out a ship and it takes 100,000 years to reach another planet, it can still be preventing billions of years of suffering on that planet, for example.
No, agreed. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, and keep up the good efforts, my friend.
Yeah. Thank you, Zach. Thank you for coming up. So, actually, extinctionism beyond Earth is really not that unrealistic. Okay? Now, we should really leave it to the science to decide. But I think it is worth noting that there are actually some very simple ways to do prevention of life developing on planets. Again, like an artificial moon, it could potentially work, right? Even on like I think that would be like the lowest level possible, right? The most basic concept of extinction beyond Earth, like the most basic concept of it for me. And again, this is probably not even going to happen. So this is just, brainstorming. But, and to demonstrate to people that, galaxy-wide extinction, for example, is really not even that unrealistic. So, even if you just sent out some ships that deployed an artificial moon and created a permanent eclipse for planets, then that would freeze the planet to death, basically. So, I'm not saying that will happen. I'm just saying that as a basic idea, it already makes sense that we could do extinction beyond Earth, right? If the ship takes 100,000 years, or even 1,000,000 years, or 100 million years to reach the other planet, and to just deploy a permanent eclipse, right? That's going to prevent billions of years of suffering. So extinction beyond Earth is actually incredibly realistic. Okay, moving on. Let's see who we've got in the queue. We have OPSEC coming up next. Hello, how you doing?
Hello, I was wondering, since I assume that you have the argument of I didn't consent in being born. You believe in that, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you can't consent to being born, obviously. Yep.
So then you think that it's a moral wrong for your parents to birth you, since you couldn't consent to that act.
Well, you can call it a moral wrong, yes, but equally, the only reason they're doing that moral wrong is because they've evolved to do that. So they can't help it. It's an animalistic nature thing, and they can't help their nature essentially.
Don't you think that that argument is based on a false premise?
Which is what?
Well, what is consent? Like, say I punched in the air and said, well, an imaginary person didn't consent to that. Well, obviously not, since a person who doesn't exist cannot consent. So when you start by saying that you didn't consent to being born, you're asserting that you could have consented to being born before you were born.
You really think so? You really think I'm asserting that I could have consented? Do you not think that that's just some philosophy brain rot?
No, I'm saying that the argument that you're
To
proposing
say that
is
nobody
wrong.
consents to being born is not saying that you could have consented. That's just philosophy rotting your brain.
Well, no, since you're asserting that it's a wrong, right? And I'm saying that that you cannot ask that question. You cannot say that you could have or you couldn't been or consented.
Okay,
Since language as a whole,
then we just say that there is no consent given. You
Well,
see, when
no.
you play word games like this, it's just meaningless, right? You can play word games, I can play word games, and equally it achieves nothing.
I don't really think so, but I guess.
So talking about babies being able to consent before that, you think it's worth talking about if babies can consent to being born or not?
Well,
Do you
no,
think it's
I was
obvious
just
that they can't
asserting
and
that
don't? You don't think it's obvious that they just can't and don't?
I was just asserting that I think that the claim of a baby not having consented to being born, which I have seen you.
That's not our main argument at all, right? The point is that they suffer terribly. That's more important than their consent being violated.
It's an argument that you have given many times, and I have now, in my opinion, demonstrated on how it's a false premise.
Yeah, you're literally strawmanning, okay? You're talking about something completely different because you can't argue against the actual topic, right? So I've not been saying, oh, babies don't give consent, they can give consent, but they're refusing. Like, what are you talking about? Some really weird people today. Okay, let's see. We've got Landan coming up next. And anybody else who wants to join the queue, get yourself in and we'll get you on stage. So the queue is in need of new volunteers for debate. All right, we have Jack in the queue. Let's get him up. Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Am I able to just ask a question, or do I need to argue?
No, you can just ask a question. That's fine.
Because I don't agree with you, but I'm also not probably smart enough to argue or to even represent my own position that well. But I was just curious, are you wanting to get rid of all creation as a whole, or just life? So like even rocks and even inanimate things? Or
Well, we just do as much as we can, right? So potentially, if we get rid of all of everything, then yeah, right? I think the less possibility there is for life to exist, the better.
okay, I gotta marinate with that. I gotta think about that. Maybe I'll come back if that's okay.
Yeah, no worries. But you really have to remember that it's about just doing as much as we can and the best that we can. So we're not saying, oh yeah, we will get rid of every rock in the universe, but who knows, maybe we will, right? Within the scope of we'll do everything we can, everything, all of the possibilities exist within them. But again, it really, really doesn't help to focus on the method, the methodology, right? We are simply saying we will do the best extinction, the most vast, the most thorough one. So you don't need to suggest ideas on how to do that. Everything's already covered, okay? So, within the scientific method of finding out the best way to do it and exploring all of the options. Yeah, we're going to look into everything. You don't need to worry, all right? We will be covering all bases. All right, so yeah, we need some more volunteers for debates. Let's get you up. We've got a lot of people in the chat with, big egos, saying big words, but will they say it to my face? Probably not. Yeah, so, a lot of people really think that extinctionism is a selfish thing because essentially they see it as, they massively incorrectly see it as, oh, this is just the way I feel and I'm going to take it out on the rest of the world. So they see it as literally coming from a place of selfishness. Whereas actually it's the opposite. It's as selfless as you can be, right? You're giving up your life, your time to help make sure that nobody has to suffer. I mean, that's literally the most selfless thing that you could possibly do, right? So, the thing is that these people like mine in the chat, they don't understand the concept of selflessness. To them, it's an impossible thing. And it's not actually something that they can ever achieve themselves. Their brain structure is literally hardwired against being selfless and to always be selfish. So when they're trying to understand the idea of someone being selfless, they cannot essentially find a good reason for someone being selfless. They cannot understand how it works, essentially. So they have to assume that just like they are, that we are selfish as well, and that we're doing this for selfish reasons, and that the idea of being selfless and helping others is just impossible, because it's impossible for them. And so they assume it's impossible for us as well, but that's where they're actually wrong. So extinctionists are essentially good people, right? The best people that we can be. We are effectively trying to be heroes in a sense. Now, it's not that we're trying to glorify ourselves as heroes. It's that essentially doing the right thing in this society, effectively makes you a hero. But, because everyone else is so selfish and evil. So, we should aspire to be heroes in a sense, but equally, it's not like, I mean, I don't want to glorify it as heroism, right? We should glorify it as just being the right thing to do, right? So we shouldn't be called heroes. We should just be good people, essentially, right? So that's the point, is that it's not doing something outlandishly heroic. It's just doing the right thing. It's as simple as that, making sure that nobody has to suffer. So, most people, where they fail to understand extinction is that they are unable to understand just how extreme and unacceptable suffering is. So, because they're unable to understand how bad it is, they treat it as something which isn't that bad, something that's not that urgent, it's totally fine, right? They'll end up saying things like, well, child abuse, that helps you grow as a person, right? Terminal cancer, that helps you grow as a person. Someone literally said that yesterday on the stream, right? They literally said, terminal cancer will help you grow as a person. So, it's very obvious that people are physiologically incapable of understanding suffering as a concept, right? You talk about lives of pure hell, and they say, oh yeah, that helps you grow as a person. So clearly, what is causing this, right? Is it just a lack of education, or is there something more going on? Is there something else going on? How can people have such wildly, completely insane opinions that, every life form is capable of taking its own life? Right, you'd have to be completely insane to believe that, right? And if you're watching this and you do believe that every life form is capable of taking its own life as a solution to suffering, then I would say that you really have to question why on earth you would believe that, right? How can a baby do that? How can a disabled person do that? How can a person with brain damage do that? How can an animal do that? How can an elderly person do that? There's just so many situations where you're not able to end your own life to solve your suffering. You know, how can a depressed person with anxiety do that, right? So, I mean, the thing is that the survival instinct is so powerful in humans that it overrides and overwhelms their rationality, right? It literally makes them irrational. So that's part of the reason why it's so confusing for people to understand extinction, is because their brain is interfering with the process of understanding it. Their survival instinct is overwhelming the rationality and the logic. Effectively, the logic of extinctionism is basically counterproductive to the human brain, right? It's counterproductive to life itself, right? It's actually bad for life itself, right? You can almost say that extinction logic is, you know, that humans are allergic to it in a way. And again, the reason for that is because they've developed that way specifically, right? To literally be allergic to logic and reason, because that way they will stay animalistic, they will continue to just reproduce and survive like animals. So, you know, if the main forces of life existing are survival and reproduction, then you have to realize that extinction goes as far against that as possible. It's saying, let's abolish reproduction, not just for ourselves, but for everyone. And it's saying that our survival doesn't matter and nobody's survival matters. So extinctionism goes as against life as it could possibly go. It goes against the mentality and the psychology of life forms as much as possible. But it also goes towards reason, rationality, and, you know, morality and, you know, intelligence more as well. So the ability to understand suffering is effectively part of the essentially the denial of and suppression of intelligence. So to keep humans animalistically surviving and reproducing like animals, their ability to understand how extreme suffering can be, and indeed the infinite, unlimited nature of the risk of extreme suffering, the inability to understand that makes them reproduce and survive like animals, right? It makes them say, yeah, I don't care about having 10 kids. I don't care if they suffer. I don't care about myself living in this life. I don't care if I suffer. Even though you can absolutely suffer so much that you should care about it, but they don't. Okay? So not only are humans incapable of understanding how extreme suffering can be, but they're also, you know, this, along with other aspects of evolution, have completely nerfed human intelligence overall. So it's not just their ability to understand suffering, it's their overall intelligence and rationality, which is completely suppressed by their own brains. And there are structures in their brains which literally are, you know, responsible for doing this. And that's because it benefits reproduction and survival. Hello, how you doing?
Hello, mate.
Yeah,
So
hi.
I've seen some people in the comments here. They're non-believers. They keep saying that, you know, oh, why don't you start with yourself? They cope with reality and say that. What do you have to say about that? What do you have to? How will you enlighten them?
Well, realistically, we won't. So, you know, the people saying start with yourself. The thing is that, as I've just been explaining, the brain is essentially allergic to logic. And it starts out with usually as much resistance as it can. And that means just not paying attention to extinction videos and stuff and just trying to ignore them. And so they're not really going to care enough to actually look into it, to think about it properly, to consider whether it is correct. And part of the reason for that is that their brains essentially see it as something unreasonable of being worth taking seriously. So I call it an unreasonable validation request, meaning that their brains essentially say, this isn't even worth taking seriously. Like, this idea is so crazy that I'm not even going to take it seriously. I'm not even going to actually use the brain power to consider whether it is correct. And so as a result, they don't. And that's why they don't think it through properly. They're not able to understand that it is correct because their brain is forcing them to see it as something so absurd that they're not even going to actually think it through. It's not even worth the brain effort to do that. So most people are limited by essentially undeveloped brain structure, less advanced brains, and then they also have to contend with the active suppression of their own intelligence by the forces and structures in the brain that have evolved to do that. So they're essentially their base brain power is not powerful enough to overwhelm the suppression of their intelligence. Whereas extinctionists are people that have been able to either break through that or have been born with enough mental capacity to overwhelm that part of the intelligence suppression.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
All right. Yeah, thanks for coming up. Now, I know everyone's really here for like hearing debates and stuff, but I think it is worth explaining some of the science and some of the facts that we're actually exploring and doing research on to explain why people are against extinction. Hello, how you doing?
Yo, what's up? I just had a couple questions. So I'm assuming you're obviously an atheist. I'm like agnostic or whatever. But so for total extinction of all life, don't most scientists believe that there's like the universe is like infinite and like expanding? So couldn't there be like other life on like millions of other planets and like in the universe
exactly.
and stuff? So how would you even do extinction then? Because even if our planet went extinct, there would be millions of other planets. And could suffering be different on those planets? Like what even like creates the concept of suffering? Like are other places like what if pain's like different?
So we've done the research on it, and actually the universe is quite likely to be full of life, and it will actually be very similar to Earth, where it's animals killing each other. And our research also indicates that life evolves to suffer. So think about how life started out as like bacteria, and then the more advanced it gets, the more capable of suffering it gets. So that is the way that life works in the world, and that is what we can expect to see on other planets. And yeah, we absolutely support doing the most vast and thorough extinction possible, which means that we should allow science to determine how much extinction we can do, if we can do beyond Earth, and how much we can do.
Wow, okay. I get it. All right, well, that's pretty much all I had to ask, so see you.
All right. Yeah, thanks for coming up. Consider checking out our website. You can read our manifesto, FAQ. We've got loads of information and questions and answers on our website. We don't really talk about the FAQ page enough, but it's very thorough. It has like 40 questions and answers, and you can all check it out. Hello, how you doing?
Hello. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, do you think it's possible? And like, do you not think it's like kind of arrogant to believe that we can even control the extinction of everything? Like life has been going on.
We've already made several species of animals go extinct without even trying. So no, I don't think it's arrogant at all. Like we already control the planet. We already control nature at our whim. So I think it's the opposite of arrogant.
But did animals go? So are you saying that? Like we made animals go extinct, fair enough. Yeah, we do contribute to certain aspects of life being extinct, but are you insinuating that extinction didn't exist before humans?
Not at all. I'm just saying that now that we're using intelligence to do extinction, we can actually do a much better job.
All right. Okay, fair enough, but I just don't think it's possible. I just think that
that's fair enough. A lot of people don't understand the science enough to think it's possible, but it is possible, right? The thing is, we know that we can. If we made the dodo go extinct without even trying, then obviously it's possible to make more of them go extinct.
Would you consider that all life is anything that is sentient?
No, it doesn't have to be sentient. You've got plants and stuff. You've got microorganisms, and they can evolve to become sentient.
Yeah, they can evolve to become sentient. So is it extinction of all sentient life, or is it extinction of
Just
all
everything.
things?
So we're working
So how do we
towards a universe.
how do we
We're
turn
working
all the
towards a
suns off?
universe with no life and no possibility of life either.
So how do we destroy every single sun in the universe?
With science.
We can destroy every single sun and star.
No, I never said that we can. That we definitely can, but we can try.
I think that's to me that feels arrogant. I don't think that we
Really,
can affect.
really.
I don't think we can affect the
So
sun.
you think it's arrogant to let science determine what is possible?
Yeah, I think it's
You
arrogant.
think it's so? Okay, cool. That's great. So Matt, there, he thinks that it's arrogant to let science determine what's possible. Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize that using the scientific method was arrogant. Yeah, it's much better, Matt, if we say, yeah, we can destroy every sun in the universe, right? Who cares about letting science decide what's possible? Let's be less arrogant and say, yeah, we can definitely do universe-wide extinction. So, humans really have everything just upside down, right? Their understanding of the world is effectively just upside down. You can almost see it as a binary switch from a 1 to a 0 or a 0 to a 1, right? If his opinion had been completely backwards, it would have been correct. So, yeah, it's just amazing. I see this all the time where people, essentially, they have these crazy opinions and you just kind of turn it around, put it back, the right way around, and now it makes sense, right? That it's not arrogant to let science decide what's possible.
Yo, what's up? I actually had one more question. So, have you ever seen Rick and Morty?
Yes.
Okay, you know the episode where they go to this one like planet or something, and they I think Morty, he plays this game, and then he like becomes a whole new life, and he lives like an entire life, and then goes back.
Yeah.
So, do you think like when we die, cause bro, like all we have is like our own perception. Like it could be possible that when we die, what if like we have like something else happens? You think that's possible?
Well, unless we find evidence that does happen, then I think we have to assume that it doesn't.
You just won't know until you die. That's funny. All right, well.
All right, thank you, Fear Storm. Moving on. Okay, we need more volunteers for the queue. Let's get more people debating on stage. Again, we've got quite a few people with very strong opinions in the comments, but not strong enough to join the queue apparently, and to actually say it to my face. So come on, guys, right? If you really disagree with extinction, tell me why, right? Now, as I've been trying to explain, there are extremely advanced systems in the brain which suppress intelligence, and part of that is targeting extinctionism, because extinctionism is an intelligent position. So, yeah, part of the reason why people don't want to come up and debate, or, they don't want to defend their position, is because in their subconscious, and so not consciously, but subconsciously, without them realizing it, they actually know that they can't defend their position, they can't argue against extinction. So this is the system, the dynamic that we're dealing with. It's essentially when we're debating with people about extinction and other stuff, you're effectively debating with a system in their brain which is puppeting as a form of suppressing intelligence. So you're not actually engaging with their real opinions. You're engaging with like a fire suppression system almost, right? You're engaging with something that's literally designed to gaslight you and confuse you, along with the person that's actually going through this themselves. So that's the truth. Now, in terms of dealing with that, That's the next interesting part, which we'll discuss after this guest. Hello, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
Good, thank you.
I don't really want to debate you because I agree with you, but just to make a point, because a lot of people like to suggest, the infinite expression of the universe. And other people could say, okay, let's say you eliminate all life in this universe. There could be multiverses. Obviously, we can't prove that. Science can't prove that. But my point would be, even if there are multiverses, parallel universes, it would still be our job to destroy this one because this one is all suffering for all
Well,
life.
yeah, no,
You could have the
actually,
best life
if
ever.
we discover a multiverse, we would be trying to make it go extinct.
Unless that multiverse was a better multiverse. I mean, all evidence points
Well,
to all life is
no.
suffering
Even
here.
if it's better, if it's not completely safe, then we'll still be getting rid of it.
I completely agree with you. That's what I'm saying. Your logic is 100% solid. No one should be able to argue with it. Because you can have the greatest life ever and be wealthy, but you're still going to get old. You're going to fall apart. You're going to suffer. We all suffer. I have a great life, but I suffer. We suffer from
Yeah,
the moment we're
exactly.
born, screaming into the world.
A lot of people, if you think about it, are just lulling themselves into a false sense of security, right? When they do get old, when they are, look, I saw it happen to my grandma, right? She was in a care home for many years with advanced dementia and Alzheimer's, and it was horrific, right? I was there almost every day, and I wouldn't want to have gone through that. Let's just say that for several years. So in a way, right, we have essentially hell is waiting for us at the end of our life.
Absolutely. And people can become religious, the opiate of the masses. They try to tell themselves it's all worth something. It's not. We just suffer. That's what we do.
That's
You
it.
know?
Exactly.
I don't know how anyone can argue with you, man. I mean, it's pure logic. It's pure logic. And even if you have a good life, like you said, the animals are out there suffering. I feed the birds. I have a rescue cat, but she's gonna get old and still suffer at the end. So you can't avoid suffering in this life. It is the only pure position one can take. Is to just eliminate it. Deep, dreamless sleep is the only time anyone's at perfect peace. So who could argue with
Or
that?
even then, you have nightmares.
Right, that's why I said deep dreamless sleep is the only time anyone has peace.
Yeah.
How could anyone argue the position? It's their ego or their belief system or some mental construct that they have created to pacify themselves.
It's from evolution, right? They evolved to
Makes
think
sense,
this way.
right? To keep reproducing, like you said, that's our main drive is just to keep reproducing regardless. But you're coming from an intellectual position of logic, and it can't really be argued with, which is funny because people try to argue with you.
Yeah, I mean, for example, this is like the high level ethics, right? Most people can't even agree that animal exploitation is wrong.
Right.
So,
Like
so
there's
this
a
is taking
boundary for
suffering
their
ethics.
empathy.
Yeah, this extinctionism takes suffering ethics all the way to the maximum, right? And most people can't even get the first step right, the most basic, low level, the smallest gesture of ethics possible, right? Becoming vegan. Most people can't even agree that animals shouldn't be exploited, right? They literally agree with animal exploitation and torture. So most people, their ethics are just completely zero, right? Extinction is asking way too much of most people in that sense when they don't even care about animal exploitation.
For sure. And it's just that monkey mind. And I say it all the time. You see society, you see politics, you see these ridiculous positions, and you're like, man, we have a lot further to evolve. And it probably will require the monkey mind to evolve even more for more people to even see that your position is the only position that makes any sense. The human population is just too stupid to understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, personally, as I grew up and as I go through life, and I think this is true for a lot of other people, they've always had something in the back of their head saying that this world isn't right. Something's wrong here. People seem kind of crazy. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. What's all the celebrity worship about? And it's like, this is a weird world, right? And that's because they're trying to make life make sense. They're trying to, force life to make sense when it doesn't, right? It's full of tragedy, extreme torture, and they're trying to make this horrible thing make sense, right? And to do that, they create, pretty towns and cities, and they keep all of the suffering hidden away, right? You've got disabled people stuck in the house. You've got slaughterhouses for animals out in the countryside where you can't see them. So it's literally about like creating a fantasy that, like a fake utopia almost, whereas really it's a dystopia, right? If you've ever seen a film or a TV show about a dystopia, it's usually at first everything seems okay. It seems nice. You've got lots of rich people with nice houses. And then you start to see the truth, the reality, that it's based on torturing the majority of the population.
Absolutely. Just like the iPhones we're holding in our hands, right? Someone's being exploited, someone's suffering, someone's having a miserable life just to hold that iPhone.
Yeah, they're probably being whipped. They're probably
everything
being
has a
killed.
cause. And it's like you said, even a plant-eating animal still something has to die for something to live. That is the nature of this existence. Something has to hurt for someone else to benefit. And it's very clear to say.
Yeah. It's not safe for life to exist. So most people have this misconception that we just need to make life better, but actually there is no point at which it will be perfectly safe. So we've looked into it, and it's actually physically impossible to guarantee 100% safety for life. So what that means is that it's not possible for life to ever be safe. It's not even possible. So life should never exist. And again, it should only exist if there is certainty of safety, but that's basically physically impossible.
Right. And that is a pure position, and people don't like that because, they can't really understand what you're trying to say with you're trying to guarantee 100%. They're saying, well, what about the possibility of having a good experience for a day? You're saying you want to snuff out all that possibility, but people like yourself and myself, we're saying it is unacceptable for there to be any suffering ever, and that is a highly moral position.
That's it. Yeah, exactly.
You keep doing what you do, man. I appreciate you.
All right, thank you. And consider joining the movement, help us grow it, make videos. That's the only way that we're actually going to be able to carry out total extinction. And we are serious about doing it. We will do it. Hello, how you doing?
Hey, I was going to talk about suffering. I was going to ask you about it before this last guest came on, but what would you say to people who aren't living a perfect, happy, good life right now, who are living in a suffering way? Maybe they're poor, maybe they struggle in their day to day, but they actually don't agree with you. What would you try to convince those people who are suffering to say, hey, like the better option is to just let's just come up with a plan to have extinction and join our pro-extinction movement. And again, these are people who are suffering already,
The problem
but they
is
still don't agree with you.
the problem is that the reason why they don't agree with us is because their brain structure has evolved to not even allow them to agree with us. So what we're dealing with is, when we're growing the movement, we are essentially only looking for those people who have a specific brain structure or genetics that allow them to agree with extinction. And nobody else will be able to agree, right? They're not actually physiologically capable of agreeing. So unfortunately, most people, we have to just rule them out as never being able to make them extinctionist. And, again, you can look at veganism as being the same thing, right? It's the same pattern, the same structure, right? If you've ever seen some videos where vegans are debating people online and stuff, right? They completely fail against like 99% of people, right? 99% of people or more will say completely stupid stuff like, well, the animals enjoy suffering. And it's like, so it's not just about extinction. It's not just about veganism or anything like that. It's about humans are essentially stuck on an animalistic operating system. So they're stuck on an unintelligent, animalistic, selfish operating system. because animals evolved that way, right? Again, animals had to be selfish to survive. If you had really empathetic animals, then they would have just died, basically. The conditions in nature are so harsh that only the really selfish animals were capable of surviving, those that actually focused on their own survival. And so that's what humans have got, right? They've been essentially stuck with that evolutionary disability, basically. And it's only now that we're starting to evolve out of it and to break free from our animalistic sort of slavery, right? Because it is something that is heavily forced and that you can't escape from, which is, the animalistic mentality, which has been forced onto humans and animals so that they would survive. So it's in the DNA, right? Selfishness is in the DNA. Irrationality is in the DNA, right? The more religious you are, the less intelligent you are, the more likely you are to reproduce. So you have to see that, all life on Earth is just a product of reproduction and evolution. So what's going to reproduce the most? It's the less intelligent ones. It's the more fanatical and crazy ones. It's the ones that don't actually have thoughts for their own their own, right? It's people that are obsessed with having kids, right? I've seen lots of women in real life recently talking about how how obsessed they are with having children. And again, part of that obsession specifically depends on to get someone super obsessed with having kids, you also have to lower their rationality, right? So the more they want kids, the less they understand or care about suffering. So the less responsible they are, right? The more they want kids, the less responsible they come. The more open they are about allowing suffering. The more likely they are to have 10 children and not care if some of them become trapped in lives of pure hell. So that's basically what we're dealing with, right? We're dealing with extremely terrible effects of evolution, making us into monsters, and most people don't realize it.
Okay. A couple quick more things. Have you ever looked into the hope that these suffering people have? Obviously, one of the bigger ones is religion, maybe Christianity. Their hope that these people have. Obviously, you think it's
I mean,
probably
honestly,
delusional
they might
or
as well just be monkeys or something. That's kind of how we see them, right? There's not much we can do for them. Their ability to understand things is limited to basically being animals. So they're effectively animals that can speak, which doesn't mean that they have no consideration, right? Whereas most people would hear that as an insult. We actually care about animals. So we do have to basically consider these humans as being animalistic, right? Because they are. They are effectively animals that can speak. So, whereas, again, we need to evolve out of that animalistic nature where you're not enslaved to your survival, right? So, most people would not give their own life up, and they think that, and they're also confused about it, right? So, again, that religiosity, that's something that's in your DNA, and that makes things like that confuse you about death, right? To where you become terrified of it, you become obsessed with the idea of going to hell. So all of these things increase your survival rate, right? They make you care about your life more irrationally, right? Suddenly you've got to worry about hell. You've got to worry about all this crazy stuff. You're worried about reincarnation and stuff. So all of these crazy things evolved into the brain, basically. And you're talking about the victims and their hope. Well, that is the same thing, right? Their survival instinct, their hope, their desire to live, it makes them irrational. And so it makes them agree to extreme suffering, right? It makes them have children and force them into lives of pure hell. And it makes them survive instead of seeking the safety of non-existence, and makes them get trapped in lives of pure hell, right? Whereas you might be able to take your own life if you've got the ability, if you continue to survive and continue to live, then you can get trapped in a situation where you won't be able to take your own life and you won't be able to escape from a life of pure hell. For example, if you get brain damage, chronic pain, no access to euthanasia, so it can go horrifically wrong, and most people don't consider that. So we have to consider the dangers, we have to be responsible and consider how it can go wrong, whereas most people do not want to consider how it can go wrong and end up suffering terribly as a result.
Okay, those are some good points. I did want to just ask questions, but I didn't want to argue, but one of the things you said is that these people who have this hope, who are currently suffering, but do have this hope, are kind of like animals, and kind of like whatever you said, but it's like the religious part of it is like you're kind of acting like like an animal or a monkey or whatever, but um
Yeah.
I think it's with science it's proven that animals don't have like a way to contemplate religion and stuff like that.
Yeah, but humans are animals, though.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I think humans are animals, but they're also different than other animals.
Right, but as I've been explaining, we have we basically are just animals, right? We're slaves to survival and reproduction, even if it's irrational, right? Even if it's the wrong thing to do, doesn't make sense to do, a rational person wouldn't do it, right? So they
I
are
got you, but
animals
monkeys
in the
can't
sense.
contemplate religion.
Yeah, but they can, right? You've got humans doing it.
Yeah, I just mean other like
Yeah, well,
monkeys, not
yeah, well,
humans.
that's you've got different animals can do different things.
No, I got you. I just mean that every animal other than humans cannot contemplate religion.
Yeah, but they're busy trying to survive, right? They're literally going to get eaten alive unless they keep running. They don't have
You're saying
time.
they could evolve to understand religion?
If you really think cats and dogs are going to start going to church, then I don't know how to help you.
No, I'm saying they can't. Like, I don't know. Anyway, we can move on from that. The one last thing I wanted to ask you was about, it's just a question. Are you basically like consuming plant life and are vegan and such in order to sustain yourself to come up with the best plan for extinction, or something? Like, is it like a means to an end kind of thing, or
Yeah, well, I think
'cause,
we
like,
should work towards an animal-free planet, an animal-free world, and yeah, we should remove our dependence on them so that we can survive without any animals. But right now, I'm not vegan, no, because veganism at the minute causes more suffering.
right?
So right now, if you go vegan, then you're contributing to reforestation, more wild animals, more forests, and things like that. So that actually causes worse suffering. Once we're in power, we should hopefully be able to fix that problem so that going vegan doesn't cause worse suffering, and then we can just do animal extinction for farmed animals and wild animals.
But what are you eating?
So
wait,
I eat meat. I eat meat right now. I
Right.
did try. I did
But
try
what
to go
about-
vegan for about 4 months, but I was like extremely allergic. And then when I joined the movement, I learned that veganism actually causes more suffering at the moment. So you have 100 quintillion wild animals, right, or life forms, including insects, that suffer and die each year, whereas only 100 billion farmed animals suffer and die each year. And the agriculture is actually taking up like 50% of the planet and has wiped out all of the forests. So all of that, 50% of the planet for agriculture is for 100 billion farmed animals, whereas, again, that's 50% of the planet's habitable surface. And so, the rest of the wildlife on the planet is 100 quintillion. Imagine how much more it would be if 50% of the planet's habitable surface wasn't being used for agriculture and animal agriculture. So you've got like 100 quintillion versus 100 billion, it's a speck in comparison. It's tiny in comparison. So wild animals are massively dominant in numbers, and more so than most people realize. In fact, a lot of vegans, for example, a lot of vegans think that there are more farmed animals on the planet than wild animals, which is like insanely wrong, like just to orders of magnitude incorrect.
So do you rate plant life and animal life to be like equal in a sense that you want to eliminate it equally, or are you?
Well,
I
look,
mean, you're just
animals
doing like a
suffer,
math thing.
animals suffer, and plants don't. But we need to get rid of plants as well, and make the world uninhabitable, right? So if there are plants, then it's not really uninhabitable, and so we need to make it uninhabitable so that there's no life ever again.
Are you open to science that states that plants do suffer?
Yeah, why not? But equally, not massively. That there's not much evidence that they do, if any, right? I mean, really, suffering it seems to require sensation, a mind, right? Input, a nervous system. Plants don't have a brain, they don't have a mind, they don't have thoughts, they don't have any sort of information, they don't have, do you know what I mean? Like, there's no sensations.
Right. So getting rid of plant life is just another way of getting rid of life, which is just another way of getting rid of like human life or animal life. Like
Well,
it's
we
all
just have to
kind of
you have to get rid of everything so that there's no chance of it coming back, right? You have to be as thorough as possible.
okay. That pretty much sums up my questions. But you're saying you have looked into religion, right? And you just find it to be just wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for coming up. Moving on, we've got more people in the queue. We've got apple cider vinegar coming up next on the Extinction Zone. Hello.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm not here to debate because I completely agree with the extinction movement. I just wanted to ask you a question. Regarding like the way the world is now with like global warming, and the declining birth rate, are we getting closer to our goal or do we still need to do other things?
No, so we're not going to rely on global warming for extinction. In fact, it kind of goes against extinction. So the priority is universe-wide extinction to see if we can do extinction beyond Earth, and we can't risk Earth before we've checked out if we can help beyond Earth. So in that sense, we would try and reduce climate change and bring it under stability, essentially.
Oh, okay. So, with the declining birth rate, like in women, and like, how most women are against, reproduction and stuff, is it also, I mean, since you said like we have to do universal extinction, clearly it's not really solving the problem, right?
Yeah, exactly, which is why we need humanity to continue reproducing temporarily until we've done as much as we can to fulfill our moral obligation, which is, bearing in mind that we're the only life that can help, that has the intelligence to be able to help. So, we have a universe that's potentially going to be full of animals suffering, and they can't help themselves. They're going to be forced into it. So we should check if we can help them first, and we should try and help them.
Okay. Thank you for answering my question. Bye.
All right, thank you. But even for just animal extinction on Earth, we would most likely still have to keep reproducing, right? To have total extinction of every last individual animal on Earth could take hundreds or thousands of years or even more. So, we have to make sure that we don't go extinct first. Otherwise, animals will just suffer for billions of years. So, to that end, we should continue to reproduce or to survive, and to reproduce until we've done everything we can.
August 1st.
Hello.
Is the day I'm going to take humans with me to nowhere.
Say what? Okay, we have an edgelord leaving the stage. And joining us next, we have JEQ. JQ, how you doing? Bringing you up. Oh no, he's left. Okay, that's unexpected. Okay, next we have Cobb Shreds. Hello.
Yo, you should kill yourself.
Ah, that's really gonna ruin my day. Not really. I get told this like 100 times a day. I've never really cared. It's never really affected me. Some people say that they wouldn't be able to do it to take all that hatred, but the thing is that I know that these people are just monkeys basically. So it's like if a dog bites you or something. It's like, well, I'm not going to punish the dog for being a dog. It's not his fault he was born that way, right? Jack, hello.
Hey, someone was saying in the comments that, like, thank God the population is declining, but then you just made a really good point that we need to keep reproducing in order to, propagate the plan of extinction. So would you support population growth? Because in a lot of places,
Yeah.
especially in the Western ideologies and stuff, the population is declining. Would
Yeah,
you
exactly.
encourage?
So we would absolutely support population growth. We would be introducing measures to encourage more births. And actually, the more humans, the better. The sooner we'll be able to do a proper extinction, the more scientists we'll have, the more powerful humanity will be, the more it will progress and advance, right? The more people, the faster you progress, and the sooner we'll be able to do a proper extinction. And for every human that exists, it actually prevents millions of wild animals from existing and suffering. Because for every human, they're contributing towards deforestation, factories being built on, wild land and stuff like that. So for every human, over the course of their lifetime, they will actually, be abolishing lots of wild habitat, for factories and agriculture, farming for your food and all of that. And it ends up preventing millions of wild animals from suffering. So the more humans, the less wild animal suffering there will be, and the more, the faster we can do a proper extinction for everyone.
Great point. On another note, though, do you support hunting and hunters?
So we support overfishing, for example. Overfishing has, I'm not 100% sure on the numbers, but I believe it's reduced the population of fish in the ocean by like 50%. Like overfishing has done an insane amount of population reduction, and we support that because realistically, the death of the fish is nothing compared to an entire life of suffering. And again, it reduces the population massively, reduces loads of suffering. So fishing, for example, that's good. And the thing about hunting is that I don't know if it has as much of an impact, right? Fishing is a massive industry, whereas I don't know if hunting is as much of an industry. So we don't really encourage hunting for extinction because there are more effective ways to do it, right? If you go into a forest and take out one deer, then it's not really as effective as working on a plan to take out all of them.
Well, the thing that I think you need to be careful about is that you can't, like, you have to go about it with a very tactical approach. And I'm sure you've already thought of this, and your group and your website and everything is probably very intelligent and everything. But if you just wipe out all of one kind, like all the deer, that would be bad. So, like with hunters, they regulate the population. They know how many tags and so on and so forth that are able to be given out, and they actually support like a healthy animal population. Because if you got rid of all of one thing, it would make an imbalance and possibly cause even more suffering of other
Absolutely.
animals.
So when we're doing animal extinction, we have to do it in a very careful way, like respecting the balance, and we also have to remove our dependence on the animals at the same time, so that we can survive with zero animals, right? We'll still be able to eat. There'll still be oxygen and whatever else, right?
It might be better to keep them around until like if you got one big bang. Again, we don't know how we're gonna do it with extinction, but if we could keep them all around healthy and balanced until we can maybe eliminate everything all at once, that might be better. But also the thing with hunting is that if you're taking them out, like slaughterhouses are not good, but if you're taking out an animal on a hunt, it's better than them getting old to the point where they get eaten alive by a predator. Like that's really bad suffering compared to just lights out. They don't see the hunter coming, and it's just, they're knocked out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, the only caveat to that is that it's difficult to, again, judge that balance, right? It's possible that by removing an animal, just one individual, that somehow it actually ends up causing more suffering. So it's difficult to really know, what impact you're having. Generally we do support, the stability, and so if hunting aids in that, then we support it. And again, overfishing reduces the populations which can suffer. So that's another good thing. Like coral reef destruction, all of this habitat destruction is a good thing. But our priority is stability for the planet, and for making sure that we can do universe-wide extinction, or at least research it first. So yeah, I mean, to that end, it is possible that we would prioritize universe-wide extinction over animal extinction on Earth. So it's possible that many of our resources could be put to animal extinction on Earth, but instead we need those resources more urgently for universe-wide extinction. And the logic there being that it is the greater mission. It's sort of the objective, really. And there's going to be much more suffering out in the universe than there is on Earth as well. So in terms of where should we put our resources, the larger population, the more sufferers out there could potentially be more urgently needing those resources. Yeah, so in that sense, it is possible that we would not do animal extinction on Earth immediately. So that is a strong possibility. Now, personally, I do think that we would be able to do some type of it, right? I don't think we would have to do absolutely zero for animal extinction on Earth. I think that even if we're dedicating most resources to universe-wide extinction, hopefully there'll still be something for animal extinction on Earth that we can start doing as well. But if not, then that's what we have to accept.
I mean, the fish, game, and wildlife community is very vast and very knowledgeable and intelligent. And I know here in America it is, in the United States rather, it's very, there's a science to it. It's very involved. And they've all probably gathered around to think of ways to preserve life rather than think of ways to extinguish it, which is probably part of the,
which is the same reason why veganism causes more suffering, because vegans are usually environmentalists, right? They want more habitat, more forests, more suffering.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of monocrop agriculture too that is very destructive.
Which is good.
But
so the more land we use for farming, the better, basically. And so most of the land is being used for animal agriculture, but again that reduces. You're basically taking 100 wild animals and replacing it with one farmed animal, something like that, basically. So in a sense, it does work out better. All right, Jack, thank you for coming up. Let's see who else we have in the queue. We have JEQ once again coming up. Let's try and get him in. And anybody else that wants to debate, let's get you in the queue. Let's get you up. Right, let's try and load him in. It's not loading, unfortunately. So while we wait for some more volunteers... Oh, no.
Hello?
Hello.
No, I'm lagging. I have connection issues. Sorry. Can I be heard? Hello?
Do you have any questions?
No.
Yeah, do you have any questions?
No.
No?
Fart, dude. I'm lagging, James. I'm lagging.
Fair enough. Lag is one of the worst types of suffering, for sure. Okay, we have Burnsy in the queue, bringing him up into the extinction zone. Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
Hi, mate.
You right?
Not bad, mate.
Great. you have any questions?
I've seen your videos for a few weeks, and I think it was quite crazy at first, but I do think you have good points.
Sweet.
And it's hard to argue against the points you make about all the kids suffering, and yeah, but I just don't see what your end goal is, really.
So total extinction, basically.
Yeah, I know that, but I don't see the logic behind it.
Well, to end all suffering.
Wouldn't that cause a lot of suffering?
And not more than it prevents.
Maybe. You seem, I don't know. It seems like you have a positive mindset about it, but it's not.
Yeah, I'm happy that we now have a solution to help all of those who are suffering. Right? It's extinctionism.
Just doesn't seem logical. And I do like how you tell people to not kill themselves and how it's selfish. I think that's clever.
So what's illogical about it?
Well, just when you really think about it, like how that would happen.
Well, we're growing a movement to make it happen.
Yeah. Could you see yourself like changing the movement into something more pro-life?
No, not really.
Maybe questioning why life is so bad in the first place and who's making life so bad and maybe trying to stop them.
Well, it's not about people making life bad. It's about nature, and life. Life is the one that's torturing life, basically, not people. It's not about bad people. It's about being alive is what makes you suffer.
I think you could argue that there is a lot of bad people causing.
Yeah, that's just one type of suffering. Though there's other types as well.
Yeah. It's a big debate, mate. I think you could get into why we're here in the first place. You know, are we just monkeys?
Yeah.
On the spit.
We're not here for any reason. There's no God. There's no purpose or meaning. It's just we're here because of nature, and that means that there is no reason. There's no intelligence put into it. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
So it's up to us to decide if this is good or bad. Right? Nature making us, forcing us to be here, isn't for an automatically good reason. Right? So we are the only ones who have brains. Nature doesn't have a brain, so it's up to us to decide if this is okay. And to do that, you have to consider if all of the extreme suffering is acceptable or not.
Yeah, mate. What would your form of execution be?
Putting to sleep.
Yeah, would that like mass gas?
Possibly, yeah.
That makes sense. That's basically already fucking happening, to be honest.
Yeah.
No, but
But we have to do this for the sufferers. That's why we're doing it.
Yeah, mate. Well, Joe, it was nice chatting to you, mate. Joe, all the best to you.
Yeah, thank you for coming up, Burnsy. Feel free to come on in the future, and feel free to read our website, learn more about us, or to even join the Discord, and maybe even become an activist for us. Hello, how you doing?
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Do you have any questions?
Not really, but I have something to say.
Ooh. Go for it.
Okay. I don't agree with your concept because you have a right to your concept. But being one of the people on Earth that has had contact with people that aren't on Earth, I feel that we do have a higher purpose beyond suffering,
What is it?
that suffering is a part of that purpose.
So what's the purpose?
The purpose of suffering, first of all, is to evolve the soul. When people suffer, they grow.
So child abuse is good.
Excuse me?
So child
What?
abuse is good.
Child abuse is not good.
But it
But
helps
it's
them grow, right?
no, it's yes, because it's part of the evolution
So
of
child
life.
abuse is good.
You keep coming back to the same thing. Can I finish my point?
Well, let's just hear it. Is child abuse good or bad? Because
Child
you've
abuse.
said it's good because it helps the
All
soul grow, right?
suffering, I won't. All suffering is challenging, bad, derogatory. Any way you want to describe suffering is not a good thing, but it is a necessary thing in our evolution to a higher point. We are not alone in this galaxy. We have in the universe. We are 12 DNA or more, made up of many beings that are all over.
So
And
you think suffering is acceptable then?
I think suffering is a part of evolution. I'll
Well,
say
yeah,
it
but
again and again.
that's got nothing to do with it being acceptable, though,
Have
right?
you suffered?
It's irrelevant.
Well, no, not really, because if you
It
can't
is.
speak, if you can't, please don't interrupt me. That's very manspan. If you can't talk about something that you've experienced, you have no experience about it, and therefore really can't offer a good.
You see,
You're,
if that were the case, then nobody would be able to advocate for animals.
I love animals. I've taken care of animals all my life. Animals
Yeah.
come
But
to me.
saying that unless you're a black person, you can't say racism is wrong, right? It is you're literally you're denying help for the victims by
You're
doing that.
going into, you're getting away from the point. You're getting away from
What,
the,
the child
from,
abuse is good because it leads to some
no, we're not
purpose that you
talking
won't
about
tell us
child
about?
abuse. We're talking about suffering in
That's one
general as
type.
a whole.
Okay, animal abuse then.
Animal abuse is bad. It's part
Okay.
of suffering.
So
There are
what,
many
how
animals
does it get
on
made up
earth.
for? So how does it
There are
get made up for?
there are
Yeah.
many animals on earth now that were humans in other incarnations. I've had,
Okay, look, we're never going to get anywhere with that person. They're clearly schizophrenic. Okay, so we shouldn't, encourage their delusions. Sarah Khan, hello, how you doing?
Not bad, James. How are you doing, buddy?
Good, thank you.
Good, good. Hey, I just wanted to say, you might not have to do anything. And the only reason why I say that is because, so I have it under good authority that, humanity is, going to become extinct due to T4 poisoning.
So the last guest and their aliens are in contact with you as well. So you're part of the intergalactic alliance, are you?
I don't know if I'm part of the Intergalactic Alliance, but I do know I'm not from this planet, though. I do know that much.
Fair enough. Serakan, the alien, everybody. I think he's on American Dad, the little grey alien. I think that's him. Okay, moving on. We have Biney in the queue. Coming up next. No? Let's see. All right, we've got two people in the queue. I'm going to try and bring them in for debates. And if anybody else wants to join, let's get you up. Let's hear your questions. What is pro-extinction? Is it mass suicide? No. It's much more than that. It's about making sure that there is no possibility of life. Hello, how you doing?
Doing well. So my primary question to you would be, do you believe in a creator, in God?
No.
That answers everything I need to know. That's if you don't believe in a creator, then why would you even think that life is precious or worth living?
Well,
You think we're just a clump of
yeah. So
cells that
a lot
came
of
together?
religious people think that it's impossible to care about other people unless you're religious. But actually, atheists are perfectly capable of caring about other people and animals.
No. I'm not talking about whether you care about anything. You don't think life is precious.
Well, I think it's too precious to allow it to suffer.
You're not making any sense at all. Life is a gift given to us by our Creator.
Okay, so
That's what
your
life is.
creator put pedophiles and children on the same planet and gave them free will?
See, that doesn't work either.
Yeah,
That
it doesn't
work
work.
either.
It doesn't work for a good world, which is why it's a bad idea, right? You're right. It doesn't work, and yet your God did that apparently. Okay, hello. How you doing?
Hi, we spoke briefly yesterday. I enjoyed our chat. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned wanting to build the pro-extinction movement. So, are you looking, do you imagine that you would try to build consensus for this? Here's the question. Say there was a button in front of you right now that you could press to execute the extinction, right? Even though you know most people right now wouldn't agree with you.
Yeah, we do it
99%
anyway.
of people. But you press the button anyway.
Yeah.
So let's say you and a dedicated group of pro-extinction people could, actually engineer this. Would you carry it out without the consent of the rest of the population?
That's basically the plan.
I see, I see. So why build the pro-extinction movement? Why not just work on, developing an actual method of carrying it out, regardless of what anyone else thinks?
Yeah, because that wouldn't really work. The thing is, you can't do extinction properly unless you are the government. So we have to do it in an organized and structured way, and you can't do that while the government is trying to stop you. So the only way to do it properly is to be the government.
Right. So, okay, I want to clarify that point before moving on to this next one, which is why would you pursue a goal that is so, obviously unattainable? There is no reality in which uh, a significant percentage of the population would ever agree to this.
Well, you don't know that?
Well, if that's what you think, then you're just as crazy as the alien lady.
Well,
Right?
no,
You think that
it's
you
it's
can
just
actually build a
that it's
consensus?
no. The difference is that you don't understand why it's necessary, so you're not able to see how it is actually correct. It is the direction that humanity should be going in. So that's you have a lack of understanding there, basically.
So you think that if you could build understanding in everybody, if you had a platform,
No, we're not going to rely on everyone, right? Most societal changes in history have only involved a very small amount of the population, like 1% is the number of people that actually come out and force the world to change. The rest of the population stays at home and will just, watch TV, basically. They'll just be sheep. So you don't need, 50% of the population. You don't need 20%. It's more like 1% basically is what you actually need to carry out a revolution.
right? So you think you could build this small quorum who would, build enough influence to take control of the government, and that government would have a publicly declared mission to bring about this extinction,
Yeah.
and
So
that the rest of the
there's lots of
population would be so passive as to let this proceed without immediately rising up to stop you?
yeah. Look, there's lots of problems that we need to solve and obstacles in the way, but we are committed to doing it.
Right. So again, it goes back to why would you pursue an unattainable goal, right?
Because
It's
it's not unattainable, right? It is arrogant to make that claim.
right. So let's say I wanted to create a government that had, a very unpopular goal that nobody else would agree with, and I'm going to dedicate myself to, pushing that. It kind of screams
Well,
of
again,
that
you're
it's kind of-
you're thinking in a very limited way, right? You're not considering that we have millions of years to do this, that we could potentially outpopulate the pro-lifers, which is what we are working to do, right? We are working on reproduction plans, donating sperm, right? Lots of ways to try and outpopulate the pro-lifers. And we are also going to look into democratic ways of doing it, non-democratic ways, every way possible, basically. So you're really limiting your thinking.
Okay. So, but it again goes back to consent and consensus. So we're talking about, millions of years in the future where the conditions of life and
Not
society are drastically
not necessarily
different.
millions of years, right?
Okay, so you're not committing to any kind of position. You're using this kind of future faking thing to say that, okay, we're not talking about the
So
present.
working towards something is future faking.
Okay, but there's no grounding that we can
If you're
actually
working
stand
toward,
on.
if you're studying for a job, then you're future faking.
Right, but if we can't agree on a basic premise of we're talking about now or millions of years in the future or
As
any
soon as
aspect of
possible.
reality,
Duh.
I mean, Is this some kind of Rick and Morty reality where it's like,
all right, this guy is unable to understand the concept of working towards something. Simple as that, right? That simple concept beyond him. Very far beyond him, like massively beyond him. So yeah, just as soon as we can do, like, what don't you understand? Jesus. Percy Rogers, how you doing?
Hey, James, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Good. I have an like sort of interesting argument, I think, or a challenge to
Great. I love good challenges, right? That's what
to your
people don't
prompt.
do.
And so I guess my thinking is such that so can we agree that that suffering is a result of consciousness, right? Like the reason I and others suffer is because I have this complex consciousness. I can recognize the suffering,
Yeah.
therefore make me unpleasant, right? I guess my argument is really, what if consciousness is really a fundamental property of our universe, right? Like, I understand consciousness in a very complex way. However, I think a single cell organism is likely to experience consciousness on a very small degree, probably almost zero.
Yeah,
but still
I
some
think
consciousness.
It's a great question, and lots of people talk about this concept, and I think it does have some sort of credibility. So yeah, absolutely. But I think that effectively, if that is the case, that what you're saying, then most likely it only manifests when there is a complex system that can suffer, basically.
Right. I agree, because basically it's more of a semantics argument to your point that all suffering, right? Like, theoretically, if I was reduced to ashes and one day I die, right? Let's say I turn to ashes and I'm just a bunch of carbon atoms. Theoretically, there could be while it's close to zero, there could be some suffering, some consciousness that, right, like those atoms theoretically could be enduring, but for all intents and purposes, it's probably, close enough to zero. It's probably basically not, you know what I mean? But again, it's more of a semantics argument. I was just curious, have you heard that argument brought up here before?
Yeah. Now, personally,
You've probably heard all of them.
I don't think that your ashes would have any level of consciousness, to be honest.
I guess my argument is it would be a degree of consciousness almost zero, not exactly zero, but
the thing is,
effectively
the consciousness really does depend on sensation, right? So look, I'm looking out the window right now, and I'm watching some leaves fall to the ground.
Right.
Now, it's easy to imagine the sensation of leaves falling on the ground as if I were the ground myself and they were falling on my arm. But that depends on a very complex nervous system, sensations, right?
Absolutely.
So I really don't think that, leaves are feeling anything.
No, I agree with you, but it was just, it was more of more of a semantics argument, and it just kind of brings up a degree of consciousness.
Here's why it is interesting, right? Here's why it is interesting, though, right? Because if consciousness does develop just from complex stuff, and there could be other types, right? So our research, and the research of Jeremy England, who is a scientist whose research we use to try and understand life developing in the universe. He's not the only scientist that's put it forward this way, but essentially life develops on planets out of patterns developing. So the sunlight will hit the planet, and the dispersal of that energy results in patterns, and that's one way in which life can form, basically. So it's interesting to think, what other sort of life could be out there, for example, right?
Or if a single cell organism experiences consciousness, right? Something like that. But
yeah, I mean, again, I really don't think so. But you could have other types of life. For example, what if there's life inside stars? Right? There could be patterns of life inside stars that have intelligence or something. That would be a crazy thing, right? But for all we know, it's possible. So exploring how consciousness does work in different types of life,
absolutely,
because how it develops is really important.
I'm just going to propose another. So they've done studies with plants, right? And you can actually look this up. Plants who were exposed to classical music, Beethoven, more music, pleasant sounding music, thrives better than plants who were exposed
the thing is,
to.
I really don't think that
I'm
unless
just
you have
saying,
a
I think it's
complex
more
nervous system-
complex than than we can observe and understand. That's all I'm saying. But I do agree with you. Like ultimately, right? Like the consciousness of again a single cell organism is basically zero. It's effectively not experiencing anything.
I think
so.
if the
I do agree with
if
you
the
on that. It's
trees
just
are-
the semantics.
Yeah, if there is some sort of consciousness for the universe, and trees and leaves and plants and rocks are feeling it, if there is something going on there, it would be effectively zero. Like it would be negligible, basically.
Right. So yeah, no, we're on the same page here. I mean, I think the folks in the chat, they might their room temp IQs might be a little hard for them to think abstractly on that one, because I'm getting roasted a little bit, but
yeah,
that's fine.
It's absolutely important to recognize that we should understand and explore how consciousness works, how it develops, where it can develop. Right? Can it exist within a
Absolutely.
star? Can it
Absolutely.
exist within the center of the core of a planet, within molten lava? Who knows, right? So it's really interesting, and as we're exploring the universe, we might find some really crazy types of life, right? It could be like something from Star Trek, where there's nebulae of gas floating around that are intelligent.
Right, absolutely. But anyways, I was just curious what you thought about that, and obviously I'm sure you've heard all of them by now, but all right, well, that was it, James. I just was curious. I'll let you get going.
Buck Rogers, thanks for coming up. All right, we've got more people in the queue. Moving straight on to our next guest. We have a spiritualistic-looking redhead woman. Hello.
Hello. So I've looked at your page, I've watched a few of your lives, and I don't actually fully disagree with you. And I do think, because I'm not a Christian, I'm not religious at all. And I think a lot of people that come up here are religious, and they just say, oh, well, we've got a God, we've got a purpose. But I don't think that's also the way to go about this at all. So I do respect you, definitely, because I've seen your things. And I do agree that I think humans definitely bring a lot of harm, like 100%. But the only thing is, I think your argument assumes that humans can only cause harm, not improve. So do you have any evidence that supports your assumption?
Well, it's not about that. So even if everybody was a nice person, they can still suffer from nature, other things going wrong. You've got animals, right, starving to death and stuff like that. So, a lot of people make the incorrect assumption that it's about human-caused suffering, but the vast majority of suffering in the world is not caused by humans.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, so when you say, like, total extinction, do you just mean also animals and things like that?
Everything, right? As much as we can do.
So do you have any, idea how you're going to achieve this, especially with animals? Because it's human nature to reproduce and,
Yeah, so with animals, we would, put them to sleep, basically, and it's the same for humans.
Because I get what you mean, putting them to sleep, animals and things like that, but how would you do that to, the billions and billions of animals that live on the world, to every single...
We already do it, right? How many animals do we kill each year? 4 trillion.
4 trillion?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's loads. That's really bad. I don't really know, because I don't really know what else to argue, to be honest, because it's, as I said, I don't fully disagree, because I do think that there's so much suffering in the world now, and I don't agree with any of it. But I do think there are other ways, but obviously it will never ever fully stop. And that's the thing.
That's why we need extinction, right?
Yeah, I get that. But I do just think, because there is proof that obviously in the long term run, humans have gotten better over time, but I just don't think that they'll get completely better.
But humans have gotten better at torturing animals, right? We've gotten more complex systems for exploiting animals and people as well. So as life has gotten, as you've got the internet now, but then you've also got the child porn industry on the internet. You've got advanced medicine, but then you've got people creating viruses like coronavirus, and you've got better hospitals and stuff. But then you've got people with better torture chambers as well, right? So, people are going to start inventing super torture. They'll find ways to just light up your entire nervous system with pain, and they'll find ways to like trap your brain in hell for thousands of years. So, you can say life is getting better, but it's not really like, I think it's actually a myth that life is getting better. Sure, some people are having better lives, but the population is growing for humans, and then you've got more people having bad lives.
Well, do you think that, obviously on that, because I do think that, well, I'm British, I think you are as well, assuming. Yeah, I think our government now, well, I'm very left-wing. Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, left-wing, okay. Well, I personally think that the government also should restrict some information and like technology advanced things, because I think, as you said, although it's so good for people, I think, obviously, as you said, it also creates a lot of harm as well with people knowing about it. So I think a way, just because I think total extinction, obviously your point is good. Like, I'm not going to lie, because there's so much harm and I don't really disagree with much. But I do think that it's unachievable. I don't think that it will happen.
Fair. But I mean, for us, we're very confident about it. We're extremely optimistic about it. But that's because we have different experiences than you do, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. But I don't agree with anything bad happening. I just want to say that I'm not like, I don't know. But yeah, thank you for talking with me, and I have learned.
Yeah, thanks for coming up, and yeah, feel free to keep watching videos, develop your thoughts on it further. For extinctionists, kind of the main thing is that we're against extreme suffering. So for us, extreme suffering is unacceptable, and that's like the ultimate truth, basically. So truth and logic is on our side, compassion is on our side. And the need for extinction is never going to go away. Even like we said, even if technology advances and life gets better, that's ignoring all of the suffering, right? So technology might get more progressive and more advanced, but then torture is going to get more advanced, right? You're not thinking of how it's going to cause more suffering, how there's still going to be suffering. So most people have sort of a very overly optimistic mentality that we're going to reach a perfect world really soon, and everything's going to be perfectly fine. But this is just the same optimism bias and irrational, irresponsible way of thinking that leads people to have children and end up trapping them in lives of hell, ends up making people trap themselves in lives of hell, where they would have been better off not being born. And so it's just blind irresponsibility, just hoping everything will be fine, taking the chance that everything will be fine, not caring how much suffering it causes, not caring how many victims there are. So these people that say, I think the world is going in the right direction, things are getting better, and that's good enough. Right, that's all they care about. All they care about is that the world is somehow getting better. They don't care how much suffering there is, how much harm there is. They don't care about anything else, right? If you think about it, all they care about is that the world is getting more interesting, right? So should we care about those that are suffering? No. I only care that the world is getting better. I don't care how much suffering there is, if it's unacceptable, if it's horrific amounts of suffering. No, don't care about any of that. The only thing I care about is that, oh, look, the world is getting slightly better. So I'm going to go back to Netflix and stop caring, right? So it's finding reasons not to care. It's finding excuses, any reason, any excuse to allow suffering, to avoid saying suffering is unacceptable, cruelty is unacceptable. So these people accept it, right? They accept the extreme suffering, they accept the lives of hell, whereas the most unacceptable thing possible, forcing someone to exist into a life of extreme suffering where they're begging for death every day, right? It's the worst thing possible that you can do to somebody. It's the worst thing that can happen to a life form, being trapped in an entire life of pure hell, right? So that's the worst thing possible that can ever happen to a life form. And yet people are like, oh, we shouldn't ban that. No, that's fine. So yeah, look, if you want child abuse to be illegal, right? You want rape to be illegal. You want murder to be illegal. You want torture to be illegal. Well, why is something even worse than all of those things perfectly legal, right? To force others into a life of excruciating torture for their entire life, to force them to experience it, to force them to suffer, to force them to feel the worst pain ever felt by anyone in the world, right? I think that's a really good way of actually explaining it to people as well, is that essentially, you have to sort of take the point to the maximum in a sense, right? So it's difficult for people to understand the concept of infinite suffering, infinite danger, infinite potential of severity of suffering, because there is no limit to how badly you can suffer. What determines that is just your luck, basically. So there's nothing limiting how unlucky you can get, right? The severity of your suffering, the extent to which you can be unlucky and get trapped into a life of hell, it's basically unlimited. But it's kind of difficult for people to understand that and to sort of put it into practice in their thinking. So I think one way to sort of bridge that gap is to say, look, you're willing to literally put an innocent child into the worst life ever lived and the most pain ever experienced, right? The most excruciating pain ever experienced by any life form ever. And the thing is, it's not an exaggeration, right? Somebody or some animal obviously has lived the worst life ever lived on Earth. And again, just imagine how bad it would have been. It would have been shocking. So that could very easily happen again. And so, yeah, if you're willing for life to exist, then you're saying that, yes, somebody being born, getting to be a postman, getting to have a wife and kids, that is worth another person being forced into the most excruciating pain possible for their entire life. So it should be obvious that it's not. And really, I think the more extreme examples you look at, the easier it is to understand that that's not acceptable, right? Is it acceptable to force an innocent person or animal, right, or to create a new life form and to put them into the worst life ever lived on Earth? Right? I mean, come on, you really have to use your imagination a bit. Get those juices flowing, okay? Try and understand the concept, right? Try and get it down in your head, the concept of the worst life ever lived on Earth, right? How bad would it have been? And how many more times is it going to happen? How many more times is the world record going to be broken for worst life ever lived? How many new victims are going to take that trophy? And you're really willing to force someone into 50 years, 70 years of the most pain ever experienced by any life form ever, just so that you can live, right? So would you send somebody to hell so that you can get to live? I think it's obviously evil as hell if you do that. So, but that is the dynamic that we have right now. That my life is worth somebody else being tortured for. Would I give up my life to prevent somebody else being tortured for their entire life? No. I'm going to let them be tortured because my happiness, my survival is worth more, right? Let the animals get tortured for their entire life. Let other people get tortured for their entire life so that I can have a normal life. That's the current dynamic that we have, right? That my life is worth an innocent person being tortured for their entire life. That's kind of the dynamic we're working with. And you can take it further and say that, yeah, people would choose to live even if it means 10 people get tortured for their entire life, right? They'll just forget about them, put them out of mind and just say, okay, well, see you later. I'm going to go on with my happy life now. And they will do that. So extinctionists are different, whereas we say, no amount of happiness, whether it's 1 billion happy lives, that doesn't outweigh the one bad life, right? So the suffering has infinite value over the happiness. But most people have it the exact opposite right now, where they say, if 10 people have to be tortured for their entire life so that I can have a happy life, then that's the right thing to do. Which is obviously completely mental. And then hopefully we can all agree that 10 people, or the thing is, right, you can really, it's a bit of a numbers game for a lot of people. So whereas extinctionists will say that no bad lives, no amount of suffering is acceptable, other people will say either infinite people being tortured is fine. So if 1 billion people have to be tortured so that I can have a good life, I'll do it. Now, some people might see reason and say, okay, if 1 billion people have to be tortured for their entire life just so that I can have a good life, then fine, I'll agree that's wrong. I will understand and agree that my life is not worth it if the cost is 1 billion people being tortured. But then you skew the numbers a bit and suddenly people's morality changes, right? So you can use an extreme example like that to make them do the correct thing, right? But that's the point, is that you really have to make it extreme. You have to make it embarrassing for them to say otherwise, right? You have to embarrass them into doing the right thing. So, if somebody's really going to say, I'd have 1 billion people be tortured so that I can have a good life, that's going to be pretty embarrassing, right? Most people are not going to say that. But then you change the numbers a bit, right? You cut it down to one person. Would you have one person be tortured for their entire life so that you can have a good life? And that's when, some people will say yes, some people will say no. But then you continue on. You say, all right, what if 2 people get to have a good life and 1 person gets tortured? And so you just play with the numbers and people's morality will change like that, basically. And it's kind of just based on whatever they can get away with, right? Whatever's not going to be so embarrassing. It's not actually based on what's right and wrong. It's really based on what's embarrassing, what you can get away with, what you can justify, keep up your appearances. So it's a lot easier to say, well, if 2 people get to be happy and 1 person gets tortured, then it's not so bad, right? It's 2 versus 1. That's the level of intelligence that they put into ethics, basically. So it's as simple as that, right? Humans' ability to understand ethics is so low and non-existent that something as simple as 2 on 1 makes them think, 2 people are happy, 1 person being tortured for their whole life, that's worth it, right? It's 2 for 1. So that's just the limit of their intelligence, basically. And it's not really a real ethics, right? It almost looks like they've put some thought into it, but actually it's based on just not wanting to think about it and just taking the first excuse. 2 for 1, all right, that'll do. 1 billion people being tortured for 1, nah, okay. So they're not really thinking about it properly. It's really just based on whatever, you're dealing with very non-committal thoughts.
Hand in the disappearance and death of Leon Trotsky.
Okay. Moving on. We have Quest in the queue, bringing them up next. And anybody else that wants to join the queue, have a debate, let's get you in the queue now.
Yo.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
I was saying though, we'll never experience that, right?
Yeah.
So basically, your movement won't make sense because, when we there, we don't experience it.
So you think that we shouldn't care about suffering because we'll all die anyway?
Yep. And
so what about child abuse? We should just allow it because the child will die anyway?
Yep.
So child abuse is good, you think?
No, but it's unavoidable.
So we shouldn't have police trying to stop child abuse?
They should, but we really can't stop it.
So yeah, like I'm saying, this is the level of intelligence that people are putting into these problems and these topics, right? They're not putting any intelligence into these thoughts, right? Like he's literally saying, yeah, child abuse, that's fine because, the child will get killed at some point, so the suffering will end anyway. So who cares about child abuse? As long as you kill the child, then it's good. I mean, he's not the first person to say this, right? We had people yesterday saying the exact same thing. As long as you kill the child, then the abuse is now ethical. It's just absolutely mind-blowing that people say this. I mean, in a sense, we are dealing with like broken robots. Right? Hello.
Hello, yeah. So, how, to me, the whole argument doesn't really make sense. I wanted to throw in more light, like, how would this end total suffering, like mass extinction? It will not do what has been done already, and I don't know like,
Well, we should do it
we should try.
intelligently.
No, what we should do is, we
No,
should strive to be better. We should
yeah,
try to be better humans instead of
yeah.
total extinction. That's like, even the
So
innocent children.
that's your wisdom, right? So your plan for the world, you've looked into everything, and your solution is, oh, we should just do better. That's the
Yes,
ultimate
we should
solution.
be better.
So what would your movement be called? Justdobetter.com?
No, we should implement laws and different things to make sure these things don't happen. Because
So
mass
what
extinction
yeah,
is
okay.
just crazy.
So let's see, what laws would you put into place to make cancer illegal?
I think cancer, it's a disease. I don't think it's it's a genetic
Yeah,
mutation or whatever.
so your laws aren't going to stop cancer. They're not going to stop suffering then.
No.
Right, so they're not good enough, right?
So how would mass extinction stop what has happened? And how? Like
What's the question?
how is it beneficial? Like, how is mass extinction of all life beneficial to anybody? Like,
Well,
what does it do?
You're demonstrating an incredible amount of ignorance, right? Because you're demonstrating that you don't realize that lots of life will benefit from not existing because it won't have to suffer.
So you're only looking at life from the suffering point of view. You're not looking at it from, other points of view, just the
Yeah, I
suffering
think it's
alone.
the other way around, right? You're only looking at life in an irresponsible way. You only care if there's pleasure. You don't care if there's suffering.
I obviously care if there's suffering, because that's what I'm trying to say.
I'm
that
sure you do. I'm sure you do, right? I'm sure you really care if there's suffering.
Yeah, and we should try our best to change instead of, just wiping out
You care
everything.
so much about suffering that instead of ending suffering, you would just reduce it slightly. That's how much you care.
If I could end it, I would end it totally, like no suffering.
Okay, so that's total extinction. That's the only way to end it. What don't you understand about that?
I don't think total extinction is the right.
Why not? Why not?
Because it just proves that we humans, total extinction is still suffering. Like, what's the whole point of going through everything and
Right.
what has happened?
The thing is, the victims who are suffering, right? You think they should suffer for a reason, right? That they should suffer so that we can exploit their suffering and eat the body of the animal that suffered or whatever, right? So for you, suffering exists so it can be exploited, right? Oh, what's the point of ending suffering? We should make there be a point to suffering, right? So the child abuse, that's good because it means that another child gets to have a happy life, right? If you have two children, one of them gets abused to death, that's good now, right? We can have a point to that. The other child gets to have a happy life. That's the way your brain works, right? That instead of ending child abuse, we should give it a meaning, give it a purpose, right? Oh, yeah, child abuse, that's fine now because even though that child got tortured to death, another child is having a good life. So that's the mentality that humans use at the minute, that extreme torture, child abuse, animal abuse, it's totally fine, totally acceptable, as long as somebody else is having a good life. But that's just completely insane, right? Extremely unethical. It's an animalistic way of thinking.
I do not support, like child abuse or whatever.
But if you
I
support
don't
life existing, then you do support child abuse.
like. Let's look at. Isn't there a way of life existing without suffering? Must there
No.
be suffering, and must there be
No.
mass extinction?
No.
And who made it that way? Like, who made it that way? Like, who gave us those rules? That we must.
Look, this is why we can't trust people like Danny to make responsible decisions, right? When it comes to banning child abuse, his response is basically, but who put us here? Maybe God wants there to be child abuse. So they will just find any reason, right? You could say, oh, look, a child's being tortured to death. And he would say, maybe it's God's will, right? Don't help the child. Instead, let's look for a reason to not help the child. That's basically how it works, right? Instead of helping them, let's find any excuse, any reason to not help them, to justify their suffering. Say, well, child abuse, that's good. It's good for the soul. Right? Someone said that earlier today. So we have to start seeing these people as being extremely irresponsible, and understanding that humans aren't all just humans are not an intelligent species, right? The average human walking around thinks, oh, well, child abuse is good for the soul, extreme suffering, that's not a problem. So, I mean, unfortunately, we don't live in an intelligent world where we can trust people to make responsible or correct decisions. We live in a world full of animals, essentially, that can talk. That's how we have to understand humans and other life, right? If we find other life on other planets that is similar to humans, in the same way that we look at humans, we'll be looking at those life as basically animals, just animals that can talk, right? That's all humans are. They're just animals that can talk, and people have mistaken the fact that we can talk for intelligence, right? Now, we do have partial intelligence, or humans have partial intelligence, but they mistake that partial intelligence for full intelligence when it's not. Hello, how you doing? Hello. Hello. You're in the extinction zone and you're AFK. Luke, hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. So I'm a veterinary surgeon, right?
Okay.
So I'm just going to talk about animals, but I think it just extrapolates to the whole. I unfortunately have to euthanize pets quite regularly. And basically, the example that I'd use is, a dog that's end stage kidney failure or something. We're between myself and the pet owner, we're electing to euthanize the dog to prevent future suffering because it's guaranteed.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you think about that, it was always guaranteed. Why didn't we do it when the dog was 2 years old instead of 14? It's a weird one to draw the line at. But, most people wouldn't put their dog to sleep at 2 years old to prevent kidney failure at 14. They want to enjoy time with the dog and all the joy that it provides to their lives and things like this.
Yeah.
What's the
Well, Luke, the reality is that people treat animals as objects, right? It's like, oh, let's go and buy one. Which color do we want, right? So they don't care about the well-being of the animal. They don't care if it suffers. They genuinely treat them like toys and objects, right? Something to own, something to order and boss around, something to amuse you. And they don't care for the well-being, realistically. So our movement would absolutely ban the ownership of pets, like completely ban it.
What would so it'd ban ownership of pets. Extinction of animals too?
Yeah.
How practically how would that sort of go about? Is that just prevention of future ones being born, or?
So yeah, the thing is that sterilization only helps the next generation. So that's why extinction should be done with euthanasia, because it provides safety from a bad life and a bad death as well.
Yes. Okay.
And from reproduction.
Yeah, of course. Fair enough. So I'm kind of just mainly asking questions, to be fair. I'm just completely curious, really. But I guess it's a bit more of like a personal question or something. But so yeah, our suffering's guaranteed. Our our potential to cause suffering in other humans and other animals is guaranteed. We can't exist without being a detriment to other people and animals.
And it's not just about being a detriment, right? Nature, like you said, cancer or bowel cancer, whatever it is, you can suffer terribly, even if there's nobody else to make you suffer.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the big, as a vet, you probably see this a lot, but one of the biggest types of suffering is injuries, right?
Yes.
And illnesses as well. So that's even if everybody was a complete angel, a complete saint, we would still need extinction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what's stopping, I guess, you and I from just saying, well, all we're going to do is suffer. Let's get it over and done with.
So that is the rational position, right? Genuinely, if you actually do the full thought process, then the conclusion is, I don't want to get trapped in a life of hell. I don't want to risk getting hit by a car and ending up with brain damage, chronic pain, no access to euthanasia, don't even know what's going on anymore because I've got brain damage and I'm just in pain, shitting myself all day, right? So that's not something you want to end up in for 50 years or 30 years, whatever. Mm-hmm. And there's worse things than that as well. So yeah, the conclusion is that non-existence is not just better, but massively preferable. It's like you should be desperate for that safety.
Yeah.
But the reason why we don't, do that is that we should help others. So we believe in ending all suffering, not just our own.
Okay, so you're hanging round to make sure it happens to everyone rather than, okay. I think that was the main thing. It's like, so you're trying to advocate for total extinction at the same time rather than...
A lot of people make it about a selfish thing and say, well, why don't you do it for yourself? But extinction activists, there's about 100 of us now, very few of us have gotten into this because of our own suffering, right? Mostly it's from observing the world and seeing how terrible the suffering is for others that's made us realize, the whole world would be better off with extinction.
Fair play, man. Oh, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for coming up, Luke. Interesting chat. And moving on. We've got Ellie Hoare. Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
Hi. Well, I have just one question really, and I'm sorry if this is in the manifesto, but I obviously don't think you'd be able to get consensus on mass extinction. Like, obviously, most people are not going to agree to being exterminated just because of billions of years of evolutionary programming. And the technology that we would have to create to bring about mass extinction would obviously be intense and very just the threat is enormous.
It's basic technology, actually. So just using euthanasia and gas and stuff like that. It's very simple stuff. I mean, look at deforestation to gather wood for furniture or to create space for agriculture. Did you know that like about 50% of the habitable surface of the planet is used for agriculture? So that's like 50% of the surface, just forests wiped out, of the entire planet. It's a massive amount. So we can absolutely do extinction already.
Oh, okay. But like not interplanetary extinction with gases. I don't know if we have the means to
Yeah, I
produce
think
that
interplanetary
effect.
stuff is going to be more about preventing life from developing instead of removing life. It'll be about preventing life.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's going to be both, though, obviously. But yeah, our priority is universe-wide extinction. So before we allow humanity or Earth to go completely extinct, as the only ones that can help and look into it, we should research universe-wide extinction. And yeah, we might have to spend thousands or millions of years, creating systems to go out into the universe. So our movement is, we support humanity reproducing for as long as it takes to carry out our objective, which is the most vast and thorough extinction possible, physically possible, which has to be determined by science, right? Most people want to say, oh yeah, just nuke it, just nuke it, just nuke it. No, we're going to use science to determine what the best extinction possible is, okay? So don't guess the science, do the science, okay? And part of that might involve maximizing the progress of science and technology, right? It might mean that we rely on, it could take 1,000 or 1,000,000 years to develop technology that can get us to the end of the galaxy, for example. But we should do it. Now, the best case scenario would be that like within 100 years, we'll be able to replace humanity with robots and AI, and they can carry on doing Earth extinction and universe-wide extinction. So that would be ideal, right? That would be the best case scenario, actually. So if that happens, then we'll be able to do human extinction, replace us with robots, and the robots can just carry on doing animal extinction on Earth, total prevention of life ever coming back on Earth, and the same for the rest of the universe. So that would be great. It's actually possible that we could even have human extinction before animal extinction on Earth. That would be pretty great. And realistically, I think the sooner we can hand this over to AI and robots, the better, right? They're going to, ideally be much more capable than humans. Hello, how you doing? Hello. Okay, a lot of people joined by accident. That's fair enough. So if anybody else wants to join the queue, now's your chance. I'm probably going to take a break, but I do have time for more debates if anybody wants to have a debate, right? What do you think? Should we do total extinction or not? Do you think suffering is acceptable or unacceptable? Again, I think for most people, because they don't have a clear or coherent or thought out system of morality, right? In fact, it's kind of the opposite. They don't have morality. They can only be persuaded to morality if you kind of like embarrass them into it, right? So again, if you say, well, would you want to live if it depended on 1 billion people being tortured? Most people would probably say, okay, no, I wouldn't. But again, you can just fudge the numbers a bit and suddenly they're like, oh yeah, that's suffering. Now it's okay. Yeah. You could offer them. So it's not just about a good life, right? Let's say one person's being tortured their whole life. One person's having a happy life. For that one person having a happy life, you can fudge it a bit as well and, make people immoral. You can say, okay, one person being tortured, but the other person who's happy at their expense, they're not just happy, they're living the best life ever lived. And then people will be like, ooh, okay, it's getting tempting to allow that suffering now. Yeah, I'll do it, all right? Yeah, one person being tortured, that's fine, as long as someone's having a really great life. A lot of people would do that. So it's very easy, unfortunately, to make people accept extreme suffering. So whereas extinctionists have a zero tolerance policy, zero acceptance for extreme suffering, most people accept it already, right? They think it's fine. and it's very easy to make them accept it. So you will never be able to make an extinctionist accept suffering, right? We will always say, what, 1 billion happy people for one one person suffering? No, we won't do it. We will not accept the suffering just because somebody else is happy. So most people, unfortunately, will accept that suffering as long as somebody else is happy. That's what we need to focus on, I think, right? Getting people to not accept suffering just because somebody else is happy. But again, part of the reason why people are so happy to accept suffering and to allow it as long as somebody else is happy is because they are not able to think about suffering correctly. If they were able to think about suffering correctly, then there's a much higher chance that they would find suffering unacceptable. So this is kind of, you really have to see this as one of the linchpins for human evolution, right? And animal evolution as well. The ability to understand suffering, how extreme it can be, and the potential of it, the risk of it, it really is essentially like the on switch for life, right? If you remove the ability to understand suffering, then life suddenly becomes happy to live and to then, end up suffering as a result when it shouldn't have lived and suffered. And it will be happy to reproduce as well. So you make life unable to understand suffering, and suddenly it's happy to live and risk suffering. And it's happy to do the same to others, to reproduce, have 10 kids and trap them all into lives of pure hell. What do I think of Schopenhauer? We are against philosophy. So our movement does not really encourage philosophy. Our experience is that philosophy really just rots people's brains. It's bad for them. It ends up making them abstract into craziness and insanity, where they start saying that child abuse is good for you and all sorts of crazy stuff like, we shouldn't ban child abuse unless you can prove beyond doubt that it's wrong. So that's all philosophy does, basically. It just justifies suffering and encourages selfishness a lot of the time. Now, the thing is about, Schopenhauer and Mainlander and hell, even Gary and Mendham, right? The founder of Ethylism. These are all just kind of indentations on the road to extinction, right? So, you've got the average Becky down the street having 10 kids, like, it's suffering, who cares? And then eventually you get some outliers, some exceptions, some genetic exceptions where they're starting to think, and, Schopenhauer and whoever else, they got close, right? They got a little bit close and started saying, yeah, life is bad. But they never took it to the next level, the all-important level, which is to actually create a movement to take action, right? To enforce what is right and wrong, right? So if life is wrong and shouldn't exist, then, it's not good enough to just say that, right? You actually have to create a solution for it, which is getting a movement, gathering people together to make it happen, to actually do total extinction and to end suffering. So look, if you love philosophy, then great, good for you. But unfortunately, we do see a lot of people fall victim to it. On the other hand, you could just say that they're just not very good at philosophy. But equally, the thing is, like, look, I was really interested in philosophy as a kid. But the thing is that I ended up realizing, especially when I studied it at school, that it's just nonsense. It is gibberish, right? It's just thinking for fun. It's thinking in circles. It's abstract rules that have nothing to do with real life. So it's a distraction. Philosophy is a distraction. And, all of human culture is a distraction as well. So it's not really any different, and philosophy hasn't really led to extinctionism, right? The pro-extinction movement did not come to exist because of philosophy. It came to exist because of activists, people that care about other life, right? That's the important thing, is that you care about others. So philosophy doesn't make you care about others. It kind of does the opposite. It makes you care about abstract, concepts and hypotheticals which have nothing to do with real life at all. And, you know, at least 50% of philosophy is just trying to be more selfish, right? It glorifies only caring about yourself and egoism and all that stuff. Okay, so I am going to take a break now from the stream unless somebody joins to do a debate. So this is the last chance, and then I'll take a break and be back in a little bit later. If you have any questions or want to buy any merch, message me directly on TikTok. But check out our website, proextinction.com. You can learn all about us. We have a FAQ page with 40 questions and answers that will probably answer any question that you do have. It's very comprehensive, and we've heard all of the crazy questions, so they probably are on our website. You should go and check it out. And consider becoming an activist, right? Don't just say that suffering is bad. Do activism for the solution, right? You're presenting the problem. Suffering is bad, it's unacceptable. You also have to present the solution, which is growing the movement to make ending suffering possible. Okay, thank you everyone, and we'll see you later, potentially in like an hour, maybe, or I might just make some videos, we'll see, but we'll see you all around later.